Hi, I hope your day is not too shabby, and Merry Christmas. Welcome to our Christmas tree painting class, our holiday workshop for this 2020 season, and I hope you have fun joining us online. You should have received a kit, and inside your kit, I'm going to talk about the different things that you are going to be using today. What you have in your kit is two different pieces of board, a larger one and a smaller one. These pieces of wood are rough around the edges, so as you're using them today in painting, I'm going to ask you to be careful not to get any splinters. We are going to fix that in this workshop later down the road. In this class, you can paint the smaller board or the larger board. It's really up to you, but you have a nice little extra one to have to do a project down the road. You have 4 different colors of paint. Brown is Annie Sloan Honfleur. The off-white is Annie Sloan Old Ochre. You have Antibes Green and Amsterdam Green. And we're going to use all 4 of these colors in a blending fashion to create our tree. You also have a container of clear wax and dark wax. We're going to use both of those for the finishing. And then a picture hanger for when you're done. A stir stick for in case you need it to scoop out paint or to scoop out wax. It's just a little extra. We're going to be using the sanding paper. And then you have a paintbrush, and the different paintbrushes, they're actually artist brushes. You may have a different size. Some of you may have very small brushes. Some of you have maybe larger brushes that are flat. Some of you may have a point brush that's a little thicker but tapered at the end. And the size of your brush is going to create a slightly different effect on your trees. So just to give you an example, all of these little trees were all successfully painted with different sizes and different styles of brushes. And that's part of the fun of doing blended and decorative painting. The last thing you have is a set of paper towels. We're going to be using them for the waxing, to lay colors down, to do some blends. They're just to have handy in case you need to wipe off your board, so you can set these aside. So let's get started. We're going to start with the Honfleur. That's the brown. And on this larger piece of wood, I'm going to use this point brush, and I'm going to get a fairly liberal amount of paint on it and create my tree trunk. And it doesn't have to be a super neat process. I'm going to come along the bottom to create that flow like the forest floor. You can make a thin trunk or you can make it a little bit wider and thicker. It's really preference. And once I get this covered, I'm not a fan of how at the end of it, how you can see the brush strokes right down there. It looks kind of like a witch's broom to me. So I'm going to take my finger and just smear it out so it looks more like the painting has faded off the edge. And if you're wearing an apron or paint clothes, you can wipe your finger on your apron, or you can grab those paper towels to wipe it down. Once I get the base brown of my trunk, I'm going to grab that old ochre. I'm not going to worry about cross-contamination of my brushes because we're doing wet color blends. So I'm going to dip my brush with the brown in the old ochre and go along the side. And I'm going to create some shading and shadows. And it's the colors and the blends that create depth to what would be an otherwise fairly boring and uninteresting looking tree trunk. And you want to do this while the paint is still wet, and that's what allows the different colors to merge and to blend. And again, you can use your finger to feather it out or to create some depth. You can use your finger to give a stippling effect like this if you want to give your painting a little bit of texture. Get a little bit more brown just to kind of fill it in, and then I can use a brown where it's lightened to add some highs and lows of the color. Okay, so we're gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna set these guys aside and we might come back to it. Okay, next I'm gonna grab my Amsterdam green and my antiques. And I personally like to start with the darker of the two colors, but you could start with the light. I'm not gonna worry about washing off my brush, and I'm gonna get a fairly liberal amount of Amsterdam green and create this wispy pine tree pattern. And I'm just gonna keep going out. You can be quick and you can be somewhat sloppy with this because we're gonna add touches and details to it. Don't worry if you don't fill in all the color. We're gonna go back over it. One of the nice things about painting trees is that they come in so many varied sizes that you can do short and stocky or tall and thin. You can go tapered on the top like a traditional Christmas tree and get bigger along the bottom. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. I'm filling in some more of this dark green because I want the trunk to be more hidden amongst the branches, but I still want to be able to see some of it. I'm filling right here, filling a little bit right here. Okay, so that's a good start. Next, I'm going to take my antiques. You might be saying that's a little bit obnoxiously bright, and it is a bit bright, but when it blends with the dark green, we're going to get some more subtle green tones. And again, because this is meant to be more like a holiday decoration, bright and vibrant just feels right to me. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to go a little bit lighter handed with this green and go more of a feathered approach and come in between where my dark green is for this lighter green. And in case you're wondering, when I do color blends on furniture, this is how I do it as well. Obviously, I'm not creating designs and patterns, but I'm taking multiple colors, using the same brush and going back and forth from one color to the next. So while the paint is on there, the color is blending. So you get a lot of variation of color. It's not actually two colors, it's two colors combining together to make a lot of different varieties and shades of that color. One of the things I want you to note that is if you start with your brush stroke going this way, you get that rounded pattern. So if you look at the left side of my tree, it's a little bit more rounded on the ends, and this side is a little bit more lifted and feathered. So I want to even that out. I'm going to feather those rounded edges out so it looks a bit more consistent with this side. Okay, so now we have both colors. They're somewhat blended, but they're not blended enough. So now I'm going to take a little bit of this old ochre, and I'm going to use this to work in the green, not so that you see this color, but this is going to add another colored layer on here to blend with the greens, so I get another shade of green as I blend it. Also creates a shadowy effect. And I'm going to stick mostly with the inside section because I don't want the white on the inside as much. I want to cover that through. I want there to be more light, more air on the outside, but on the inside I want to be relatively colored. I'm also just getting a little bit of this old ochre, not a lot. And it's going to blend out some of that brown. And I like that because that gives the idea that there's branches coming out through this green. And this is a really subtle detail, but it's filling in and giving even more blending to it than we had before. And as you do this, you can start going back and forth between the different colors to add more layers. On these forest trees, if you're good with shading and color combining, doing the lighter sections on top and working to the darker is suggestive of the sunlight coming on the forest. I mean, if anyone's going to be evaluating your art to that degree, you could go that direction. A little bit more of this in here, right here. Depending how quickly you paint, if you go a little bit slower and do a little more detail work, you'll find that as you go through this, your paint starts to dry. And when you do that, it pools. When the paint pools when it's dry, you get some really neat texture. So sometimes it's fun to actually let the paint dry for a few minutes and then start adding your layers of colors, because you'll pull that dry section around and then the wet paint below it will move with it too, but it gives it some variation in texture. Okay, now that I'm done with the blending of the light, I'm gonna go back with my dark Amsterdam green and I'm gonna add some highlights. Now I'm not gonna go quite as long and far out as I did, because this is gonna feel more layered if I add short sections. If you want bolder strokes, put more pressure with your brush. If you want lighter strokes, just get the tip with paint and go lighter pressure. So how you hold and angle the brush is going to help determine what your strokes look like. So now I'm gonna get a little bit more of this Han Flora, this brown. I'm gonna emphasize some of the tree trunk. And I'm gonna give it, hopefully, the idea and suggestion that there's branches coming out. And just start grabbing your colors and filling it in a little bit here and there. The right side of this board has a lot more texture on it, so the paint didn't grab through all of this. And I like the way that looks, but I'm gonna fill it in a little bit around here, just so it doesn't look quite so uniform on that. I'm gonna go back and forth between the two different colors and layer them. Now I'm going to do that over on this side too. So you could leave it like this and call it a day, or you can add some lighter, more wispy, small branches to the sides. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go up like this a little bit and give my tree a little more character and definition. And I'm using a little bit of a bigger brush for this, so I'm keeping my strokes pretty light. And I'm gonna do that all throughout. Just add this. And the color is blended, but you're gonna see the variation of brush strokes. So that's what's gonna help you see this defined texture and detail. I'm gonna go back and forth between the dark and the light green. And I can even go get a little bit of this old ochre and add some of that into it and move it with my green so it stays green, but it's just a lighter variation of that green. And this does not have to be perfect or precise. That's one of the things I like about doing these kinds of trees. You don't really have to be an artist, and you don't really even have to know what you're doing. And just step back, look at it, add some details if you want. Keep going, or you can keep it simple. So I think I'm gonna leave it like this. One of the things you can do if you wanna give it a little bit more texture is take your paper towel. This is called frottage. Lay it on top, go like this, and then peel it back. And this is gonna flatten out some of the paint, but it's also going to give it a little bit more of a canvas style painted effect and helps further blend those colors. And this is a technique I use on furniture too. Oftentimes I'll use newspaper to do that frottage effect. Okay, so we're going to let this dry. It won't take very long. While it's drying, I want you to grab your sandpaper, and you're going to use this, grab the corners, you don't want to grab where it's wet, and you're going to lightly sand the edges, because this is old, refurbished, reclaimed, salvaged wood that's been hand cut, so it definitely has the capability to leave splinters. I'm going to sand it smooth. Once you smooth out your edges, you can take the sandpaper and really sand the corners and get that distressed look going on. On the bottom of my tree, I'm going to sand this so that some of the white peeks through. It's going to have a slightly more distressed quality. And then I'm going to do that on the tree itself as well. And you don't have to do that, that's optional. Then take your paper towel, wipe off the dust. And it's nice and smooth, definitely rustic, but I don't feel I'm gonna get too many splinters. Okay, when I'm done with that, I'm going to grab one of my clean paper towels and we're gonna give this a wax top coat. You have a little container and in it, it has a little pile of clear wax and a little poof of dark wax. We're gonna start with the clear wax, and what the wax is going to do is it's going to seal the paint. You wanna make sure that this is dry before you wax it. So this is dry. If you need to speed up your dry time, you can grab a hair dryer and put it on the low heat setting to dry it up. But I'm gonna put a little bit of wax on my paper towel, and I'm going to wax, move it around. This clear wax not only provides a protective top coat, but it saturates the color, so it makes the colors in the paint much more vibrant. And now the clear wax is on there, I'm going to add dark wax to this. You need the clear wax first because without the clear wax, the dark wax does not blend very well and it does a stained looking finish, and we don't want it to look stained. We want to give this a rustic antique patina. So I'm going to use my same rag, my same paper towel that I used. I'm going to get a little bit of dark wax on it. And for this, I'm just going to focus around the edges and the corners. So I'm going to do a little dark wax right here and a little dark wax right here. You can see it's pretty dramatic. A little dark wax right there and some right here. I think I actually need a little more. So now I'm going to take one of my clean paper towels and I'm going to start wiping off the excess wax, starting in the center and working my way out. And the reason I'm doing it that way is because rather than moving the dark wax in toward the center, I want to work the dark wax more toward the edges. And this is how you would do on furniture. Let's say you're doing a dresser or a nightstand and you want to shade the edges. This is how you would do a shaded edge. And because this hangs, it can hang on the wall, I'm actually going to even wax the edges. So I'm going to get the same rag I used. I'm going to get a little bit more of this clear. I'm putting it where I had the dark wax. And I'm going to wax that edge. And this gives it just a little bit more of a finished look. And it doesn't quite look like raw wood. Like I'm getting wax all over the place. And it's important to sand this smooth before you do this. Otherwise, you're going to get splinters come up through the paper towel and into your fingers if you don't sand it first. All right. Now that I've got that, I'm going to take my relatively clean-ish paper towel and wipe off this extra wax. And there we go. And you're all set. I hope that you had fun with this. Some ways that you can level up this painting is if you have some Christmas ribbon or some cute red or black or even navy blue buffalo check or forest green, you can tie it around the base of it. Don't forget to attach your hanger so you have this as an option to hang on the wall. And this is a nice, really simple addition to your Christmas decor in and around your house, or it makes a nice little handmade gift. So I hope you have fun working on this one. You have the extra piece of wood, so you can do a small version of this. give it away as a gift, or just have another extra little piece to hang around your house. Remember, you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook. You can email me, and you can call the shop. I'm happy to help and answer any questions that you have. And I hope that you found this process fun and artistic for the Christmas tree, but you got an idea of how you might be able to adapt this color blending technique to some of your furniture refinishing projects. So I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Thank you for participating, and I definitely look forward to seeing you between now and the holiday season or into 2021. Take care.